This is a pretty different video from what I normally have on my channel. Not that I haven't talked about multiple different movies in one video, but reviewing two different movies and somewhat comparing and contrasting them is something I haven't really done before. The closest example I can think of was when I reviewed the Fear Street trilogy, but really that was just a review of each of those movies compounded into one video. I think what makes this video that I'm putting out here kind of a special occasion in my mind, at least, is because it's also reflecting and talking about the phenomenon that has been Barbenheimer, which, if you don't know by now, if you've been hiding under a rock, this is the release on the same day of two huge movies, those being Barbie, directed by Greta Gerwig with this huge A-list cast, and then also Oppenheimer, directed by Christopher Nolan, also with a pretty big A-list cast. And like a lot of people, I did actually see these both on the same day. I didn't do back-to-back screenings. I saw Oppenheimer in the morning, and then I saw Barbie at night. I wanted kind of a good resting period in between to take in the, somewhat heavy lift that was Oppenheimer, which is a good thing, by the way. I don't mean that in negative terms. And then kind of chase it down with Barbie later in the night. So to start off with my first part of my Barbenheimer experience, I saw Oppenheimer first, as I just previously stated. A lot of you guys, I'm sure, know what it's about by now, but just a quick refresher. We follow J. Robert Oppenheimer, based on a true story, in this movie portrayed by Cillian Murphy, who is known as the, quote, father of the atomic bomb, end quote. And we basically follow how he comes up with this idea, the idea coming into fruition, and then the aftermath and repercussions that result from its creation. I really like Cillian Murphy as an actor a lot, and I absolutely loved him in this role, loved his performance. He has worked with Nolan several times over the years, but this is supposedly his first leading role in one of his films, which, yeah, now that I think about it, he has only played supporting roles in his other movies. And I thought throughout the entire 3-hour runtime of Oppenheimer that he did a magnificent job, leading the pack, if you will. Honestly, I thought all the cast did a great job here. I really have no complaints at all when it comes to the acting in this film. Even kind of small roles like Benny Safdie, I thought he was very good. I enjoyed Emily Blunt's performance here. Florence Pugh was a big standout for me amongst the supporting cast. But probably the biggest impressor out of the whole supporting cast in my mind, which people have been talking about and will continue to talk about, I imagine, is Robert Downey Jr., who plays Lewis Strauss. Holy crap, what a great performance this is. He is very unrecognizable. You can still tell it's him. I can still tell it's him. That's a weird way to phrase that, but he just looks different with his hair, and also the black and white filter, of course, adds to this. That is in a lot of his scenes, which I'll actually talk about a little bit later in this video. But he changed his voice up a little bit too, and he, for those of you who don't know, in a nutshell, he's basically the enemy of Oppenheimer, of J. Robert Oppenheimer, and he has lots of disagreements with his views, especially according to the creation of this bomb. There were a couple moments too with Downey's acting that reminded me of one of the early scenes in Avengers Endgame when Tony is first brought back to Earth and he's very upset and he's just, in Steve's face. It's very intense pain that he's feeling and he's emoting. That a couple of moments here with Downey's performance reminded me of that part of Avengers Endgame. But going back to the black and white filter that is present throughout a lot of this movie, I do just want to first mention that I think the film looks great. The cinematography is lensed by Hoyt van Hoytema, and it looks really good throughout the whole film. But I didn't entirely understand why there was the black and white filter applied to a good amount of the movie, because I thought maybe it's for scenes that flash back to the past and involve Lewis Strauss, his whole subplot of the film. But then other times those scenes would be in color and we would see Downey in color, and then it would go back to black and white pretty soon after that. So I just didn't get why it was there. It didn't bother me that much overall. But I do just think it would have been more effectively applied if there was a clear reason as to why it was there in the first place. And if I am just continuing to rattle off my flaws here, I don't love that a lot of the movie is pretty much just told in flashbacks. We see characters in the present talking about things that happened to them in the past and being questioned about their past. In general, I'm really not a big fan of that plot device when it's used in movies. I just think it's a bit lazy. I think the execution of it here is fine, but that's just a nitpick that I have with it that I normally have when movies use that. And there were a few moments during the movie where I did start to lose interest a little bit, and I did start to just, think about random things in my head because I wasn't totally there with what was happening in the movie. But I would say at least 90%, possibly even 95% of the film, of its runtime, I was there and I was engaged, for the 3 hours that it played out. It kept my attention for the vast majority of it. And as I kind of alluded to before, there is a really great sense of structure with this movie, with the way that the plot plays out, where you have the beginning portion of the bomb, the origins to the bomb getting made, and how Robert kind of comes up with the idea of it, and then the whole thing getting made and being tested, I guess, and then the aftermath of it and what results from it. And especially in the third act, when we're in that third portion of the movie, you really do get a great sense of the psychological effects that this bomb has had on Oppenheimer. And there are some really great moments with his character where you can tell he's almost regretting even coming up with the idea in the first place. And he has a lot of these "what have I done" moments. What is this going to lead to? Are we doomed? This, different things like that. It's really very well realized. But then you have some other people, like Lewis, for instance, claiming like, no, this is what he wanted all along. He wanted this attention, and he wanted us to, possibly feel bad for him at certain moments. And it is crystal clear, especially in the third act, the division between the people who are for the bomb and the idea of it becoming a thing and becoming used by different countries, and then the people that are against it. One last thing I want to mention before I move on to Barbie, I loved the score done here by Ludwig Göransson. It added a lot to the intensity of certain scenes, and also the absence of music did have a pretty profound effect at certain times too. Very happy with how this movie turned out. I definitely liked it a lot more than Nolan's last film, Tenet. That movie was decent, but this is a pretty big step up, in my opinion. And now to talk about the second part of my Barbenheimer experience, which was, of course, seeing the movie Barbie. Barbie, of course, being based on the Barbie dolls from Mattel, the toy company. We follow the stereotypical Barbie, which is very important to clarify because everyone in Barbie Land is named either Barbie or Ken. So you have all these different Barbies and Kens. And then there's Alan. But Barbie is living her normal Barbie life, going about her daily routine. Everything is great. It's perfect. It's tailor-made to satisfy her on a daily basis until suddenly she's hit with these anxiety-ridden thoughts out of nowhere. And she goes to the real world to figure out what's causing this. In a nutshell, I would say that sums up this movie. I liked how each Barbie kind of served their own role in Barbie Land. You had the physicist Barbie, President Barbie, some real political undertones to the construction of Barbie Land, and each Barbie and Ken serving their own particular roles, and also how things change when certain people go from the real world to Barbie Land, and maybe some of these roles are reversed in a way. So Margot Robbie was apparently cast as the main Barbie here. That's what I've heard. I never saw her in this film at all, though, so I don't really know where that's coming from. Jokes aside, though, I really loved her as this character. I thought she knocked it out of the park, and it really was to that point where I didn't see her. I never thought that's Naomi from Wolf of Wall Street, or with Ryan Gosling as Ken, I never thought, oh, that's Sebastian from La La Land. They both just embodied their characters and their personalities extremely well, in my opinion. And I especially love Ryan Gosling's performance when Barbie and Ken go to the real world, because of course Ken has to tag along. He has to do everything he can to get Barbie's attention. And I thought that Gosling's comedic acting really shines in those moments where they're in the real world. I also loved Will Ferrell in this movie. He does play a pretty one-dimensional character, and no pun intended, a stereotypical type of villain, very greedy, no care for his employees. He plays the CEO of Mattel. We've all seen this kind of character before, but I just thought he did a great job here. He had me cracking up numerous times, and that is just one of my biggest praises with this movie, was how funny it was, how consistently the jokes worked, for me at least, and also how well it blends with some of the more dramatic commentary that is presented towards the back end of the film especially. The film had me laughing quite a bit at certain moments, but then also getting a little bit emotional towards the end, which I would say is surprising that Barbie had me on the verge of tears at a certain point, but it's not for me because Greta Gerwig has done this to me before. Her films have affected me in this way, like with Lady Bird. So it's not too off the rails confusing for me. One flaw I do have with the film, though, I definitely at times was thinking when they were in the real world that I just wanted to go back to Barbie Land, because I was more entertained in those scenes. And even though we do get some good stuff from the scenes in the real world, like I said, Ryan Gosling, I think, really shines in those moments. Will Ferrell was awesome. There was a couple of characters in particular that they introduced here that become a pretty integral part of the plot that I just wasn't totally won over by. I think they could have been developed and written better overall. That's about all I have to say on Barbie for my review portion of Barbie of this video here. I think most people are probably going to assume that I liked Oppenheimer more and I had more to say about it, so I probably enjoyed it more. But to answer your question, because that is the big question, which one do I prefer? I actually liked Barbie a little bit more. And I especially was won over by the message presented at the end of Barbie, which is basically, what is our purpose in life? And I know that sounds basic, that sounds really cookie cutter, but I really like how it's unpredictable, because it seems to be going in a direction at a certain point in the film. Not to spoil things, but essentially something happens when they go back from the real world to Barbie Land, where things are a lot different, and they kind of get things back to normal at a certain point. And I thought, well, that's not a great message. That's basically saying don't embrace change in a way. But they actually end up finding a better message, I think, towards the end that I thought was fitting and effective for the film. But like I said, of the two films, I do prefer Barbie, and I do just think it is a better movie in general, too, because that is an important distinction to make. You know, some people will say, I like this one more, but I actually thought this one was the better movie overall. I enjoyed Barbie more, and I thought it was just better made, too. I do think they're both very good movies, though, and I do recommend seeing both of them. Right now, they're making a ton of money, so odds are you already have. But yeah, if you haven't, I would suggest going to see both of them, honestly. And they're both killing it at the box office, too. I keep saying the word both. Sorry about that. I don't know when exactly this video will come out, but I'll just post a picture of the most up-to-date box office numbers from when I'm editing this. It's cool, especially to see Oppenheimer making this much money, because it's a 3-hour-long war biopic drama. It's rare to see these movies get this much success, and it's awesome in my opinion. Not only because of the rarity of this, but just because of how good it is too. I think it deserves all that. But I think that about wraps up my Barbenheimer experience. It was really cool. It was a great day for me seeing both of these, and I would just love to know how your experience went. If you saw both of these in one day, or if you saw them back-to-back screens, because I know a lot of people did do that. I want to know all of that, how you feel about them, which one you prefer, or what order you watched them in. If you saw Barbie or Oppenheimer first, please let me know all of that. I really do want to know. But with that said, thank you for watching, and peace out.